So one of the questions I get a lot is when and how do we start working on digital transformation? Now, I've seen companies make a lot of mistakes when they try to start working on digital transformation. And over time, I came up with a framework that I found helpful to explain some of the pitfalls that companies fall into. For now, it's called the four curves of digital transformation, but it may have a better name later. Let's talk about the first curve. This curve is the intersection between two curves, which is the cost of a solution, a technology solution. That cost tends to go down exponentially over time. If you read Peter Diamandis or any of these exponential thinking or singularity university literature, you'll learn a lot about how the cost of technology goes down exponentially over time. But there's a point at which that cost intersects with the willingness to pay curve. And that is a critical moment because as of that moment, which I call the market point, you can really build and expand adoption of technologies, of new technologies. The challenge is that somebody has to pay the bill for that big gap between the cost of the solution and the willingness to pay. And generally that happens through some sort of subsidy. It could be research and development subsidy, it could be government subsidy, it could be long-term investments with companies that have deep pockets. A good example of this would be solar energy. It received a lot of subsidies from the German government, for example, for decades, billions and billions of dollars until it reached the market point. But today it is at a market point. Now, this market point curve intersects with another curve, which is the adoption curve. And the adoption curve, I'm sure you've heard a lot about it, but basically there's a small percentage of the population that will adopt something early on, the lead users and the early adopters. It's about 16%. Then you have another 34% approximately that buys the solution once it's been proven. There's great literature of like crossing the chasm, for example, of how this transition happens from early adopters to early majority. And then you have late majority and late adopters who join this technology much later. Now this curve intersects with another curve, which is the technology investment curve. And the technology investment curve has several phases to it. One of the phases, the first phase really, is sort of the research and development phase where you're developing very basic technologies or even science that'll turn into technology later. And at some point, once you start seeing industry applications of this science or this technology, then you start having startups and venture capital and incubators sort of building solutions based on that research and development. And once it's proven and once you've had sort of success in the market, then it enters a third phase of commercial expansion. Now, the reason companies will spend a lot of time and energy on the research and development in the first phase or the venture capital and startups in the second phase is because the long-term returns are exponential on these if they really become adopted. There's a fourth curve now that interacts here, which is the curve where companies are really waiting until a technology is more mainstream and they're building business cases around that. And I call this technology sophistication curve. And so it looks like a cash curve because companies are generally doing a business case and they're saying, yes, we need to implement this CRM or this ERP, and there's a lot of proven success that this works, and we can hire consultants who will deliver this and implement it on time and on budget. Now, what's the challenge? The challenge is that a lot of companies don't differentiate between these different phases, and they don't have clarity on what their true innovation profile is. So they say, we want to work with blockchain, for example. But if you really want to work with blockchain at the first phase of R&D, you have to be willing to be putting 7, 10, 15 years of money into this before you're going to see any results. Some companies like to get closer to the market point and say, I want to work on blockchain technologies, but I'm going to go to something that's a little bit more applicable, more ready, closer to a market point. But you still need to be willing to put 3 to 5 years into incubating something that won't see results for a while. And then there's a different innovation profile, which is I'm going to wait until something is proven and I'm going to basically adopt it once it's a best practice or once there's clarity that this can be done on time and on budget, and clarity of all the proven success cases before me. So I've seen a lot of companies try to adopt emerging technologies when really it doesn't match their innovation profile. So they like the idea of working with startups, for example, But then their boards of directors are all looking for business cases before they apply or they implement a new technology. And you can't really build a business case with a lot of these emerging technologies. One of the challenges that weak innovation ecosystems have is that the number of early adopters in their markets is so small that you really can't set up a good pipeline of startups or venture capital or incubators because there aren't enough companies willing to try these emerging things out. So you really need to be clear what your innovation profile is as a company and sort of what the ecosystem you're in, what the innovation profile of the companies in your ecosystem is before you get too deep into developing sort of these emerging technologies in early stages. But the second mistake that I've seen companies make is maybe they're clear on their profile, but they don't always take into account the timing. So maybe, yes, we have deep pockets and we're willing to spend 7 years developing this emerging technology to really make it happen, robotics or AI for agriculture, but the timing is just not right. We didn't get the grant, or the grant priorities for these next 2 years are different than what we're trying to do. So even though it's the right match of an idea for the organization, it's not the right timing for that idea within that organization. That tends to happen quite a bit when we're looking at the second stage. Yes, we're interested in working with startups, and we're interested in trying this new satellite technology for monitoring crop efficiencies, for example. But it turns out that the timing of my early adopter customers is not right. As a startup, I need, let's say, to generate results and sales within the next 6 months to keep my startup afloat. But the decision-making cycle for my early adopter customer is 14 months after it goes through all the loops and holes that need to be approved to hire me and work with me as a startup. So it's a great idea, again, a great match between a technology and an early adopter customer, but wrong timing. And it also happens even in the later stage profiles, innovation profiles. We have a business case, we have proof this is going to work, but mid-level management, which needs to be involved in the implementation of this new technology or this new system, is completely saturated. They don't have any time to spend. And so even though it's a great technology for the great company, it's not a great timing. So how do you solve these problems of the innovation profile, alignment, and the timing? It's absolutely critical that if you're going to start working on digital transformation, that you get the strategy approved from the top, from the board of directors and from the executive team, and that they understand and they agree and they come to an agreement together on what their true innovation profile is. Because if you think as an innovation leader that your company's profile is more this second profile, for example, but your board of directors thinks that it's more this third profile, you're going to generate a lot of frustration. You're going to bring a lot of opportunities to work with emerging technologies to the table, and they're all going to be shot down at the end of the day. So number one, get alignment between board of directors and executive team as what the actual innovation profile is of your company. And both of these are totally fine. This is a great innovation profile, and this one is too. It's not that one is better than the other, but you have to have alignment in terms of what it is. And the second is make sure that you get alignment on the timing. At what point will we have the bandwidth to really work on these new ideas and assign teams and hire people to work on them? If you don't get that alignment on the timing, you're also going to generate a lot of frustration. So I hope this helps. Don't make the mistake of trying to adopt digital transformation without being clear on your profile and without being clear on if it's the right time.